Hello good friends, it's time for another top 10 video, and today we venture into the year of 1997. The effects of Scream from last year hadn't fully taken effect yet, so the group of movies that made the list has everything to offer from vampires, science fiction, creatures, and yeah, there will be some slashers as well. You should see a few honorable mentions that didn't make the list on the screen right now, and I should also mention that the biggest movie of the year that didn't make my list was Alien Resurrections. Sorry to the fans of that one. The Americans absolutely dominated this year, with only 2 out of the 10 entries coming from different places in the world, with France and Japan being the 2 represented countries. Overall though, I would say that 1997 was a less year than the previous one, but still an above average year for horror so far in this decade. While I do have fond memories of several of the entries from back in my younger video store days, I will say that I'm not missing the 90s that much while watching everything that gets left out of these top 10 lists. Anyways, let's get started. I am Torstein from CinemaTerror, and this is what I believe are the top 10 horror movies of 1997. We start off at number 10 with 2 Orphan Vampires by the French director Jean Rollin. I think this might actually be the first time a Rollin movie made my top 10 list, even though this is not my favorite of his. 2 Orphan Vampires tells the story of, well, 2 orphan vampires. These 2 young girls can handle the sunlight, but it does blind them. So they pretend to always be blind until the night arrives so they can go out searching for blood. It's a simple story, but you're not venturing into a Jean Rollin movie simply for an intriguing plot. Instead you watch his movies to get hypnotized into his strange, nearly surrealistic world. It's a bizarre, nearly dreamlike state that you get in while watching his movies. So even though the plot might not be all that great, Rollin's style should be enough to keep you engaged. It feels like a movie that could have just as easily come out during the 70s or 80s, and in that regard it is kind of a timeless picture. Of course, this will not be a movie for everyone, but for those who prefer the vampire stories being told in a very, very European way, then 2 Orphan Vampires, or any other of Jean Rollin blood-biting stories, should be of your interest. We stay with the bloodthirsty vampires at number 9, as we got a full moon picture on this spot with the Vampire Journals. This is actually a spin-off of the Subspecies series, which was up to 3 movie entries at this point. It is a standalone story, so you wouldn't need to see the Subspecies series to follow along, but some names are dropped every now and then connecting the 2 worlds. We get a vampire hunter, literally, as he's both a vampire and a hunter, a music-loving vampire, young, beautiful women, and some bite marks every now and then. Vampire Journals feels like the Subspecies entry that took influence from Interview with a Vampire, a previous top 10 entry in one of these videos. The vampires are all brooding, hiding in the shadows, being mysterious, tormented, and sexy. It's a typical kind of direct-to-video vampire movie that I would generally avoid, but there is some great atmosphere to the Vampire Journals that somehow makes this work for me. I actually think this is the second best in the Subspecies series, and one of the most atmospheric movies put out by Full Moon. Much in thanks to director Ted Nicolau taking advantage of filming in the great city of Bucharest. It should be easy to guess if this will be a movie for you or not. If you want your vampires to have long flowing hair, lavish costumes, and sexual appetite, then this gothic B-movie will be for you. Beware that it is a low-budget Full Moon picture though. But even so, the Vampire Journals did manage to make it on this list, so I guess that should be a weird seal of approval of sorts.
We'll back for delivery. The Vampire Journals.
What do you get if you combine short stories from Clive Barker and Stephen King and give them to Mick Garris? You end up with the number 8 spot on this list with Quicksilver Highway. This made-for-TV movie gives us 2 different short stories, told by an eccentric showman played by Christopher Lloyd. The first one is called Shattery Teeth, based on a Stephen King story. It's basically a story about killer teeth in the form of a wind-up toy, which sounds more fun than the execution. I would have liked to see these teeth do damage in a different setting. The second story is the much better one called The Body Politic, and it also has killer body parts, as this one is about the rebellion of hands, led by the hands of a plastic surgeon. So we get killer toy teeth and killer hands. I guess that is a way to tie the stories together. I'm not gonna lie and say that this belongs in the highest section of either Barker or King adaptations, but Mick Garris and his team does deliver a TV film that will be able to keep you entertained. Both stories feel like they are prototypes for Garris' eventual Masters of Horror series and would fit nicely in there. I do prefer the Killer Hand story, as that one takes full advantage of its ridiculous and funny premise. So if you are a fan of horror anthologies, if two stories even make it count as an anthology, and you are running out of other movies to watch, then by all means, give Quicksilver Highway a chance.
And filled with wonders and a handful of stories in search of a willing audience. Do you have time for a story?
At number 7, we head out into space with the sci-fi horror Event Horizon. This one is set in the year of 2047, where a crew of rescue workers are on a mission to find out what has happened to the reportedly missing spaceship Event Horizon, which has mysteriously been spotted around the planet Neptune. When the crew boards the Event Horizon, they will discover the horrible reason why the ship went missing and come face to face with a new, unknown, unspeakable evil. Event Horizon is a film that had a troubled production and a subpar performance at the box office, but even so, the film did quite well in the DVD market and has gained a strong fanbase ever since. The issues during the production do haunt the film in every way, and it is hard to avoid thinking about the true potential that the film had. It has a mixture of Alien, The Shining and Hellraiser to it, and with a strong cast made up of stars like Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, it does deliver several strong moments that make it easier for me to understand why others enjoy Event Horizon even more than what I do. I'm sure many of you would have liked to see this bumped up a spot or two, but the main negative for me is that there is nothing in it that really sticks with me. Once the movie is done, I forget most of it within a few days, even after rewatching it a few times over the last few years. But it does deserve to be here, and you should give Event Horizon a chance, and also check out a video another YouTuber called Good Bad Flicks did on it. I will leave a link to it for you in the description box below.
She won't let you.
God help us.
More big-budget Hollywood sci-fi horror follows at number 6 with Guillermo del Toro's first American movie called Mimic. Mimic stars the beautiful Mira Sorvino as a scientist who has managed to genetically engineer a new breed of insects that are made specifically to eradicate the huge infestation of cockroaches in New York City, before they themselves naturally die out, as the new insects are all females. 3 years go by after the assumed successful experiment, when suddenly a much bigger and deadlier version of the insects start to appear. This time not killing cockroaches, but rather human beings. Mimic is a 50s big insect monster movie wrapped up in the explosive fun 90s aesthetic. Just like Event Horizon, Mimic also saw issues during the production, mostly because of creative clashes between Del Toro and the disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein, ending with a final cut that Del Toro did not approve of. Even though Mimic may not be a big, notable entry to Del Toro's impressive filmography, it is an entertaining film with dark, grimy visuals. And if you like movies with big insects running amok, then Mimic will be one of your best choices out of the crazy 1990s.
Jeremy Northam, Josh Brolin, Charles Dutton, Giancarlo Giannini, F. Murray Abraham. Mimic.
We now go into the very opposite direction, both in terms of style and also geographically, as at number 5 we have the Japanese crime horror Cure from Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Koji Takabe portrays Detective Kenichi Tanabe, who has to try to solve a strange string of murders where the assailant is located close to the murder scene with no recollection of what has actually occurred. With no links or clear motives in any of the cases, Detective Tanabe has to seek out the help from the psychologist Sakuma to try to figure out how to prevent more unnecessary, gruesome murders. Cure sort of marks a start of the big J-horror boom that would fully explode next year with Hideo Nakata's Ring. Cure does not have any ghostly figures, but it does have the same type of low-key, silent, slow-building style that J-horror will become known for. Cure plays out like many other dark detective stories from the 90s, combining the best parts of a thriller and a suspenseful horror film, and it is excellently handled by Kurosawa, who would go on to make other noteworthy entries to the J-horror boom with stuff like Pulse and Seance. Cure should definitely be of interest of fans of Japanese movies, but be warned though that it does require patience and your full attention. Our next entry sees us back again in the mainstream US market, with one of the biggest teen slasher films of the 90s landing in at number 4. I Know What You Did Last Summer. 4 young friends, portrayed by some of the hottest up-and-comers at the time, end up in a deadly hit and run, leaving an unknown man dead. Scared and frightened of the consequences, they drop his body in the nearby water and make a promise to each other that they will never reveal the secret to anyone. But 1 year later, someone lets them know that they know their secret and they are not seeking justice but rather revenge. I Know What You Did Last Summer came out only a year after Scream, and its success would solidify that the teen slasher genre was back in full effect. It was a great time for screenwriter Kevin Williamson, who penned both blockbusters and obviously should receive a lot of credit for putting the horror genre back on the map in terms of box office success. I Know checks most of the boxes needed for an entertaining teen slasher, in that it has a unique concept, cool-looking villain, talented, attractive cast, and a style and pace that serves well for a big crowd pleaser. I'm gonna assume that most of you are fully aware of this one, but if not, then I Know What You Did Last Summer is a great slasher to put on in an evening when you want to be entertained.
I Know What You Did Last Summer.
At number 3, we have an underrated Stephen King adaptation called The Night Flyer. Miguel Ferrer stars as a sleazy tabloid reporter Richard Dees. He makes his living by covering grotesque and insane news stories, and his latest task is to cover a murder spree by an alleged vampire who travels by a private plane. Dees has no personal belief in any of this stuff, or even a journalistic integrity. He wants to deliver a disturbing story to his newspaper and get a paycheck, but this job assignment will turn out to be much more than what he could ever have imagined. The Night Flyer is quite a unique vampire monster story from Stephen King, brought to life by first-time director Mark Pavia and the leading actor Miguel Ferrer. He is awesome to watch as his scummy so-called news reporter Richard Dees. His uncovering of this gruesome story is fun to follow, and Pavia does show off his skills by providing the film with a great 90s atmosphere that sometimes borders on becoming slightly disturbing. Oh, and Peavy from Porky's shows up in a smaller role, and that's always a plus in my book. If you are a fan of Stephen King adaptations and never checked this out, then I urge you to do so. The Night Flyer ranks high up of the 1990s King adaptations and might be one of the most underrated horror films based on his work, being well deserved of a top 3 position on this list.
You always wanted to know what hell was like. Now you will know.
And at the runner-up spot, we got one of my favorite horror icons from the 1990s, as at number 2 we have Wishmaster. Wishmaster tells the story of an ancient jinn that gets unleashed in our modern world. This is done after a young appraiser, Alexandra, accidentally releases him from his captive space within an opal jewel. The jinn needs Alexandra to make 3 wishes for him to fulfill, which will give him the power to open a gateway for other jinns to come true and cause destruction on our Earth. Wishmaster is a great 90s love letter to the entire genre of horror movies, with creative special effects by K&B and effects guru Robert Kurtzman in the director's chair, lots of references and appearances by beloved horror icons, and of course an excellent performance by Andrew Divoff, who seems to have the time of his life by portraying the evil jinn. The plotline itself might not be all that interesting, but I can remember how refreshing Wishmaster was upon its release, in between all of the teen slasher movies that started to dominate the genre at this period of time. And I think the movie still holds up just as well now over 25 years later. With all the remakes, reboots or whatever that's been coming out over the last decade or so, I will be positive to see the return of Wishmaster in some form or another, and I am happy to put this mischievous djinn at the runner-up spot.
For your life. Help me! Pray for your soul. But whatever you do... Ready to play? Don't make a wish. Wishmaster. Careful what you wish for.
That leaves us with one final movie, and a horror film that I think is the best from the year of 1997 is Wes Craven's Scream 2. This follow-up keeps the same energy of the first one, and while it can be argued that it is just more of the same, Scream felt so new and revitalizing to the genre that I will happily take more of it. In this sequel, 2 years have passed since the horrible events of the first film, and a new Ghostface killer has emerged, seeking to do what the original killers were unable to do, put a knife through Sidney Prescott and her new college friends. Scream 2 came out in theaters almost exactly a year after the first one, and would continue to build upon the teen slasher craze that the original started. The meta-humor still worked, all the surviving characters from the first one are back, and you feel like anything could happen to them. While I have become a bit more lukewarm on the identity of Ghostface in this one over the years, I clearly remember being pleasantly surprised when I first saw it back in the day. If this one had failed, then I doubt we would have had such fondness for the Scream franchise today, as there have been many great horror movies throughout the time, but in order to make a beloved franchise, you need more than one. And Scream 2 definitively did a great job in that regards, and is well deserving of being called the best horror movie of 1997. And that's that for 1997. Not the best bunch of movies I've talked about in these top 10 videos, but hopefully the list will provide something new for you to check out. As always, I am interested in hearing your thoughts on the year, and which horror movies you might have wanted to see included in it. The more recommendations to other fellow horror fans in the comment section below, the better. These videos do take a lot of time, and I watch basically every single horror movie that I feel could have the potential of being picked for the list, and the copyright claim situation on YouTube is always fun to deal with when uploading them, so please do leave a like and a positive comment if you appreciate them. I will continue to be making them as they are a lot of fun and a great way to discover movies I normally might have skipped. So subscribe and get ready for my list for 1998, as the work on that one has already started. Thank you all for listening to my thoughts here on YouTube. I will see you soon again here on CinemaTerror. And again, thank you.